So, hi everyone, I'm Elizabeth from Sacred Earth and Storm School, and I'm really excited. This is the continuation of this Mayan star sign series that I'm doing. And today I have a really amazing infinite being called Johann, who lives in South Africa, not very far from me in Cape Town. And Johann is, well, where do I start? But anyway, let's say the two main summaries, and maybe Johann, you can speak a little bit about what you so-called do. But Johann is a White Crystal Worldbriger. So the star sign in the Mayan calendar is a Worldbridger, as in world, W-O-R-L-D, bridger, like a bridge. And Johann is also an amazing artist. He's more known, maybe, it's debatable, as a yoga teacher, phenomenal yoga teacher that's been doing it for a long time, shall we say. But I really see you, Johann, as an artist. I mean, I'm sure yoga is also art, but, you know, and musician. So I'm really excited, and maybe I can convince Johann to do a little bit of sound and music for us. He composes his own sound. You've got his SoundCloud account as well. Hey, I can put it in the link.
Yeah, all the usual
Talk a little bit about what you
Spotify and so on. I started out wanting to do the usual music, what we used to call singer-songwriter, you know, like the hippie songs, where you would just have a guitar and you write some lyrics and some basic music. And always loved all kinds of music. And when I started to do yoga, I became aware of how melancholic music can be, and also how angry music can be, and also that music can be healing. So without realizing it, music can influence your mood. In other words, we know it can make us happy or sad, but we don't really appreciate the power of it, or to what degree the choices that we make decides how we feel or how we go through life. So if you, for instance, if you're a melancholic person and you're listening to melancholic music, chances are quite good that you're going to be depressed. Or the melancholia can mix in such a way that you feel uplifted because you're not the only person that's melancholic. But either way, it's important, not just useful, to tune into what colors are you surrounding yourself with, what sounds are you surrounding yourself with, and not from an artistic perspective, but really a practical one. So when you talk about bridging worlds, it's also, where does art meet science, or where does that meet practicality?
Yes.
So I became very interested in music, but from many aspects, but eventually I realized to use music as a healing tool for myself, and then in the process sharing it is what I wanted to do. And then started doing a lot of meditation music, which is tons of on the internet, and now I'm returning to acoustic music.
Yeah, beautiful. Listen to your Spotify, you know, meditation music. I have to say it's really, really profound, and it's so much of it is original. You know, often we find people do their music, amazing artists, and being able to perform, and that's a great gift. But to actually bring through original, authentic sound and music is phenomenal. And yeah, it's very interesting, this thing, you know, of the Worldbridger, because the Worldbridger is literally, as you say, bridging the worlds. And music for me is actually the one thing where it so obviously bridges the world, say, can take you into completely states of being or emotions. And there's this easy, effortless flow of moving through things. So that's so true. I never thought of music and Worldbridger. And I love talking to people because you embody it. So you have a great knowing of what this energy is, you know, and what it represents.
Yeah, it's a huge topic, but from the teaching aspect, or how do I understand this, and how can I explore that understanding in such a way that it makes sense to someone else? That's your teacher persona or archetype. So it's great for me to understand what you just now said, but then I need to reflect on that, and it's that self-reflection that makes it possible to bridge for me the ability to introvert, and then to be able to talk that with the blend of introvert,
to externalize it again.
Yeah, so there are a lot of interesting aspects to what you talk about the Worldbridger, but as a sort of entry point as well, you know, the the yoga Om sound, one of the profound ways that yoga explains existence as a human being to us is that it says that there's the whole, or the universe, everything. And in yoga, they beautifully call it all that is. And they're saying that the energy behind it is the Ancient of Days. So it sounds, it's quite mystical.
Beautiful.
And then here you have a human being with a body and a shape and a form. And it says, how do we interact with this universe, or the room that you're in? And of course, with our eyes and ears. So sound is an important part. But then there's another layer of interaction in yoga, the chakras, the chakra system. So in yoga, the anatomical and cosmology or universe goes like this. There's a universe, and then there's energy, all the vibrations. So now you see sound, energy, and then you have the subtle bodies in your, you know, so you have an aura, that's your subtle body. And then how we interact with the universe is through the subtle body. And the subtle body interacts with this physical body through the chakras. So yoga, we have subtle body, chakras, nervous system, and endocrine system, the glands, and then the muscles, and then the bones and the organs. So that's the pecking order from from manifesting the universe into one human being, but very much via the chakras. So that's the essential understanding of yoga. And if we want to understand ourselves in any way, as far as I understand it, as far as I'm concerned, sounds like an opinion. The science says that is how it is. It's not actually any other way.
Absolutely. It's science. But you know, it's so beautiful for me also just to reflect once again on the Worldbridger, the energy of Worldbridger, how that's also reflected in the yoga. I mean, it's actually reflected in everything, because it is the blending between the unseen and the seen. But so beautiful how you talk about it being translated into the physical, into the body, you know, making the unseen manifest. And that's such a theme for this year. Very much about the Saturn going into Pisces, which is about the spiritual, more unseen, mystical, but Saturn being able to put it into form. And it's interesting, you're a Taurus in conventional astrology, and that's very much about earth and having structure and dealing with material. So I love it. It's almost like your yoga has got all the dimensions in it, but it's also very physically orientated. And then your sound, which is more like, you know, the not the nebulous, but the ones that still looking to express itself in form more. But what I wanted to ask you, do you want to say something first?
No, I'm just enjoying.
Yeah. So what I was going to ask, because Johann and I and his family, actually, his son Alexander as well, we had amazing adventures in Egypt, also the Great Pyramid and many of the temples. But, you know, just recently I was reflecting on this thing that the ancient Egyptians worked with sound, and one of the key words of Worldbridger is also death. And I often find it when I speak to clients, you know, and tell them what their star sign is. I tell them what their keywords are, and then the word death comes up. And in the Western civilization, you know, people have an immediate thing like, oh no, really? You know, what does that mean? Is that a bad thing? And it's no, you know, death is like the Egyptians, as we know, said, you know, what is death? We actually, by being alive in this physical form, we are dead, and we only become alive when we so-called die. So it's a very, what is death and what is life and all of that. But they use sound, you know, in the initiations, and you may know or remember more of this because you and I think share a strong Egyptian past life, ancient connection. is they would use certain sounds and it would almost replicate this moment of death or going into, these so-called altered states. And the sounds would be very, very precise. So and this required a lot of mastery, because you could even get lost almost in that sound or dimension, because the sound would open dimensions or portals, or how would you describe it? But this absolute mastery of working with sound and being able to go into these other worlds, which is once again Worldbridger, the Mayan Worldbridger, as they call it.
Why like one of the principles of the ancient world, when we think beyond the usual norm of like a lot of whatever you'd call it, esoteric minded, broad minded people around the world, and there are, you can't put a number to it, but there are hundreds of thousands of people around the world that's it's a kind of a bubble almost within a world where, to generalize this, the world, the medium that we're on now, like the social media and the earth as a society, the way it is run by governments and the normal media companies and so on. It's got everything in it information wise, from the like sublime to the ridiculous, and the profound to the absolutely ignorant. And when we start to work with sound, it actually cuts through all those layers to this very truth core of who we really are, which is vibration, and that explanation I said earlier. And even in the what appears to us as esoteric and advanced societies, the ancient, the real ancient doesn't even feature, because it's kind of lost in the mists of time, literally. So what we're rediscovering now is a fantastic knowledge of how divine and sublime the human being has been. And if we look at it like this, then we see we truly have fallen from grace as a humanity. If you go from the era before the pre-Atlanteans to the Atlantean era to the ancient Greek times and the ancient Egyptian times, according to our limited ancientness of 2,000 or 3,000 years. But before that, there was a very high civilization, frequency-wise and ability-wise as well. And yet some of that exists in our time now as well. And part of what we're talking about, this bridging, is to become conscious, to become aware of where we are at, and give ourselves credit, as you often say as well, for what what we are, and how conscious we also are, but also how we've got a way to go. There's a process, and so we're at the same time in this deeply in touch with so much, and at the same time we're in the I don't know what to call it, always in the unconsciousness of our being at the same time. So it's a very awkward place, I think, in some ways, and sometimes it's very kind of gnarly as well. And it's a process of transformation and so on. Perhaps it's always been like that, but there's definitely a sense of a lot of light coming through and a lot of transformation, which raises a whole lot of new processes as well. So I just wanted to say that the power of what's being suggested to us now, what's coming through, is kind of the proverbial tip of the iceberg. There's so much more light and possibility in just unearthing or remembering, and whatever you want to call that process, becoming again the glorious beings that we are by design. It's in our DNA, and accessing it, like, through the sacred sites and sacred practices, sacred referring to divine potential, something like that. we can so easily do it. That's the other theme that I see in your work as well. We just have to drop a whole lot of preconceived ideas about and realities. Like, it's been hard. It's been hard for us to get to this point. And it's
and that dropping, it just once again reinforces me as such an interesting theme. This of the dropping is the death, and that's one of the challenges, ironically, of the Worldbridger is, very much that death is required for new beginnings, but there can also sometimes be a tendency of insecurity, of hanging on. And I mean, that's been a really big theme for the last few years, isn't it, for the whole of humanity, actually the whole planet, as to, are we hanging on, or are we willing to let go and to shed the old, and the comfortable, because it's just a comfort zone. It's not necessarily our greatest choice, but it's just comfort. And the body, is such a big driver in it, because like you were saying, we are being able, the journey now is, we had all these, well, my perception of it is that we were immensely advanced as beings, but we weren't as physical. And now we bring, so to embody it in the physicality, that is such a, a new journey. And we're doing really well. But I just often wonder how we can, I just know, just thinking about it, how sound, even the deep process of mourning after death, whether it's the death of ourselves, even, a certain aspect of myself that I valued. I remember when I was, I was living more in the 3D economic reality, where I was an attorney, and I gave that up, so-called. And, there was a period where I really had to grieve it because I didn't have a label. And I kind of went, people would say, what are you? What do you do? And I couldn't have a label, a word that could immediately put me in a certain box, a certain perspective. And there was a great loss of almost like a part of me. Okay, I know this isn't me, but I'm so used to it. So I'm just thinking, like, say, wakes or funerals or the traditions, the ceremonies, it's always involves music. And somehow it gives, I was just speaking to somebody yesterday, actually, her husband passed away. And she said, she couldn't really cry. She shed a few tears, but he had been suffering, and she was in a way relieved for him to go. And then she went to an unrelated, a few months later, someone else. It was a work colleague. She didn't really know him that well. And she said she listened to the songs and she started to cry uncontrollably, but it was her way of mourning, in a way, a past experience as well. So how music is able to give us that, you can't fathom it, hey, but somehow it gives you comfort. There's no resolution in the mind about it. The person has gone, but somehow there is a resolution that the music can provide. How do you see it?
Yeah. Why I went into that almost feeling one's way into a sometimes difficult space to understand. Because so when we talk about music, and I mentioned genres of music, so I remember there was a time that I used to love loud rock music, and that was good for me because it helps to purify me, and so we go through different stages. So what's particularly clear is that we have a youth and we have a middle age, and then we have a different time when we're older, so we're not always at the same stage, and then we do have an end stage and a death stage. But when we open up the word death and we talk about it, then we can work with it. It doesn't instantly remove our fear of the death. So, like a short, easy personal story. So as a child, I remember having night terrors, and I was uncomfortable with the dark. So, then as you grow up, I meet an interesting therapist like yourself, and you're sitting there and you're tuning into the ethereal world, and you're saying, Johann, you know what, it's really it's something that you experience in ancient Egypt, and I can see it clearly, you know, that you were in a dark tomb, and that was the initiation process. Then I can laugh at that or go deny it or whatever the case is, but I realize, hey, that's actually a hint here. There's an initiation process. So it's about working with that dark. So I did something like that. And as an adult, I avoided those tents where you, like the sweat lodge, because of the claustrophobia and the darkness. And then I was at a festival, and there was this, that thing, it's like it's a Red Indian, Native American idea. And you crawl into this little fire on the inside, they make it pitch dark and you sweat. It's like a sauna, but like black inside. And it's a warm experience. And the amount of fear that I had to deal with is just ridiculous. You know, it's like but I knew I wanted to do it, and I had to do it. And then you come out on the other side, and it's a personal initiation. And so that helps you to deal with fear. But because we're in the process of evolving, we have to become aware of, we're in one place, there's another place that we want to go to, for instance, life and death. And these are all gateways, like you say, portals. And the fear of success, the fear of failure, all these things, they're fears. We have to deal with them in some way or the other. And what I'm also getting at is we have to, whether it's like online, like this in public, we're coming to terms with our thoughts. What is time, space? What are the chakras doing? And so for me, as a human being, to be able to say on a public stage, I fairly recently would get night terrors as an adult, because obviously there's some subconscious process playing out. So some nights I couldn't sleep. So now here I am, a well-seasoned yoga practitioner that has overcome fear in so many ways. And now I'm facing the fact that I can't sleep anymore, because I wake up some nights and I'm falling into a void, and I can't sleep because I'm too scared to go back to sleep, because I'm going to fall into this void. And then eventually, you work through these fears, and you realize, hey, this is me not scared anymore, or not scared of death anymore. So these contexts are important, because we don't just start out on this journey, leave our corporate job, buy a crystal, and then suddenly the world's awesome. And, you know, you're visiting sacred sites, you get a crystal, and like people look at that again on social media, and they go like, wow, that is so fantastic. These people are so happy, you know, like, wow, I want to be like that. And in what we call reality, it's not like that at all. So that aspect exists totally, but it doesn't not confront the other areas, or the other areas confronts this, those aspects. And if we can't breach those with conscious energy, then what are we doing? We're just living in a box. We're going like, we're isolating this box from any fear or challenge. We're going like, life's fantastic, just get a crystal. And it's not like that. You've got to get the crystal, deal with the same fears, the same challenges that you did in the corporate world. And
yeah,
as you know,
yeah. I know, yeah.
So yeah, so it's as you know, it's not just leaving the corporate world and then suddenly life is fantastic. That's why some people don't have to, or maybe shouldn't leave the corporate world, because that's their place. We're finding our place. Perhaps I have to go to the corporate world and find my place there. You know, these kind of like, yeah.
It's being in the question. My favorite teaching of all for me is be in the question.
Yeah, that is fantastic.
And there's just awareness, and it keeps on changing, which is also Worldbridger, which is about accepting change. So Worldbridger for me is, especially at this time, it's so relevant. For me, if I have to almost put a astrological sign to it, for me, it resonates a lot with Aquarius or with Uranus, this thing of change, of being willing to embrace change and to stay in the flow. But now you mentioned crystal, and it's very interesting, just for those, also give a bit of background on the Mayan calendar, is, so Johann is the fifth, what they call solar seal, which is called, actually it's the sixth one, sorry, which is called White Worldbridger. So that's, Johann, that's more your masculine aspect. And then your feminine aspect, or they call it a moon tone, is called crystal. And there are 13 different ones, and you're the 12th one. And the 12th one is crystal. And crystal has the essence of it, to almost start talking about it, is about interesting, like you were saying, about bringing it all into crystal. Crystal is about also dedication. And for me, you're a very dedicated, I mean, to practice yoga, you need some form of dedication, definitely. And also, you know, it's a very evolved sign, crystal. So you're able to see things from a much more, the other word is universalized. So, I mean, I'm sure everyone also just listening to this will have a sense of you as being very universal. You know, you see the bigger picture. You talk about the bigger picture. You're always relating things, you know, as a whole, not just the small, narrow vision. So that's very crystal. And then the other thing which I wanted to ask you about, which maybe you can talk about, because I think you also live it a lot, is cooperation. So crystal people, you've got the crystal tone, and they are there to help us all to go into cooperation. You know, and once again, it's almost the Uranus concept of brother and sisterhood, and so relevant. Also, I sense very much for this year and going forward, is this thing like, you know, we are so much more together, and we're all unique. And this is why it's so nice to do it with you, because, you know, when I'm just here sitting talking to myself, it's really not so much fun. But when I can interact with you, there's a co-creation, and so much more is created. So, yeah, I mean, you do a lot of, I know you are so modest and low-key, but you do a lot with communities as well, hey? In your local community. You do incentives.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? It's really great. It's as inspiration, you know, Johann. It's not about the ego, but it's about inspiration for others to see what you are doing. And they can start having ideas to do it as well. Because that's also my for this, is, you know, for these talks to be inspirational for people. Get new ideas.
Yeah. You know, in the lineages of yoga and the Eastern worlds, and if we're looking at the biblical text as well from a Middle Eastern world, geographical idea, and we're thinking of ourselves as Europeans, I'm assuming you do. We have that direct European family trees, and we came to Southern Africa in our case. And we have this influence of the American culture, and yes, stereotyping for sure. But when I think of the American culture, I'm thinking of excellence in commerce and the ability to, you know, monetize things, as it's called, and a materialism, for instance. And it's very hard not to choose sides, or in the yoga system specifically. Why I love the yoga philosophy so much is it suggests to us that we look at what we can't do as our growth point, so whether that's an asana, a posture that you can't do, or a practice, or if you can't meditate, then don't go like, I'm just going to run, or, you know, go to gym or something. Your growth point will be meditation. So it's important that we look at our shadow side from a Western psychological perspective. It's really important that we also look again at what is this yoga teaching of service, which is a way of saying it's community work. And why yoga is so revealing for me is you're doing community work not because you think little of yourself, but because you're realizing that you're making a difference. Yeah. You're also realizing that you're making a certain difference within a humble context, in the sense that if you're helping a little old lady across the road, that's like quite a humble thing to do. But in the process, you're growing spiritually, and the humble the little lady gets as a reward from your service she gets somebody to carry a shopping bag. And that's a small thing. It's actually quite humble. It's a small thing, but it makes a big difference in two people's lives, because the one person feels they're creating good karma, and the other person is the recipient of that act of good karma. And if we could live like that, then we're living experientially in a sense, but also experimentally. So some of the what you call community work that I do is for me also literally an experiment. So I've taught yoga classes in our community because it's something nice to do. It's a nice experience. You learn from it. We also essentially, when you're sharing the energy, it is a service, and it is humble when we understand that we're sharing a talent or idea or music that's truly not yours, the person sharing it. So when I share yoga, it's actually sharing a wisdom or a knowledge that comes from not India, but it's a knowledge base that exists. So that's that whole thing. If you're born beautiful physically, like a model, our world is beautiful, it's considered beautiful, then if you stop and pause for a moment, you should be humble if you realize I'm simply beautiful because my parents are beautiful and they produced an attractive child. It's got nothing to do with you. That's how it happened. And I've met beautiful people like that. And you meet a beautiful person like that, and you're like amazed at this person, because it's not often that people are conscious enough to realize that their beauty is, just something that exists because it exists. And so there's a lot of
and because I mean you're surfing, because amongst many of your talents is that you're a phenomenal surfer, surfing waves in Muizenberg. And didn't you do some also with the street children there or something on the beach?
This, as I say, everything is a contribution to something. If you live like this, so for me to how can I put it blunt? I don't have a lot of time to spend to teach everyone yoga. So I do some, but you're helping to set a certain tone of bringing the yoga practice to those children, and because it starts to change their lives. And you, as a yoga teacher, or with the work that you do, are always like a lot of the yoga students that I have are working in those fields, for instance. So it's called paying it. A couple of years ago, there was this paying it forward kind of campaign, where you just share whatever you have forward. You either give your second T-shirt away, or you share an idea, or you give 2 hours at the community or something like that. And those are good examples as well of paying it forward. So however which way we pay it forward, by making public or visible this idea of service, and showing people that anyone can give something, a little bit of time or an expertise or something, into the community. And yoga is renowned for that. Originally, so the yoga lineage that I come from, the ashram that I trained at, is a traditional ashram where it's a place of service. Its origin and its existence is based on service, as in it's a non-profit organization, but not the non-profit kind of organization where some people in the organization makes a ton of money, and like, or 90% of the profit or something. And I'm not saying that NGOs are like that, but the principle is non-material in that sense. It's an outreach project, in other words. So a lot of, interestingly enough, the surf projects here, in the surf school projects in Muizenberg, they're truly outreach projects. They're actually not for the fame and fortune of the owners. And that inspires me to want to be part of that, or to help out there where it's possible. And when we can as human beings, you know, if you're thinking of levels, say you're in the center and there's extreme religiousness or materialism or whatever it is, or extreme arrogance or something, if you can bring a little bit of the center from your lineage or discipline or knowledge or understanding to the whole again, there's the greater whole, then it influences the whole thing. Everything's the change through you being the change, because it's anyone has some capacity to bridge this gap, you know. So if two people are angry, no matter their status or where they're from, and you can say a kind word to diffuse the problem, and maybe if you have a negotiation skill and you can say, so how would you go forward here? With that simple question, what's now possible? You're not fighting, so how are we going to go forward here? Then that's bridging the gap between two energies, you know.
Yeah, beautiful. Here comes the Worldbridger again, hey?
Yeah,
I'm really
and that's humble. That's essentially humble.
So many things. It really is very helpful for me.
And it has to be an internal process. So you know, when I own it and say, hey, I've had my dark night of the soul, and on some occasions, it's felt like it would destroy me. You know, so I remember periods of intense depression, following years of, how can I say, dealing with depression or overcoming depression. And then at some point you're like, how's it even possible that with your credentials, whatever you want to call it, abilities to feel depressed about something? You go like, so hey, let's look at that. What is it? Is it perhaps just simply chemistry? Is it because I'm listening to depressing music? You know, if we don't have, so the bridging is also understanding. If we don't understand ourselves physiologically on some basic essential level, then how on earth are we going to overcome or transcend anything? How is anything going to change? So there's a lot of processing involved, in other words. And, you know, if I don't come across someone like yourself that says, hey, Johann, by the way, it doesn't have to be difficult either, then I can maybe get frustrated at that and say, like, I don't agree, it's very hard. Or I can go, yeah, maybe you've got a point there. You know, so that's bridging a gap for me. And that's how it works. And when people come out and they say things, which is what's happening a lot now, fascinatingly enough, on the internet. So there's just so much positivity. It's kind of it's so visible. Obviously, depending where you look, but it's like there's this two clear channels going around or being transmitted, and the one is 3D or whatever, old school, in a negative sense, and or the negative aspects of old school. And I like to think that the old school has some fantastic qualities that we also need to bridge forward, like discipline or reliability or whatever you want to call it, like old-fashioned sturdiness, honesty, whatever, transparency, and not just positive on positive. So that's just going to, you know, do the trick. Practicalities, and and then you have the other stream of absolute sort of a force of positivity.
Yeah.
And so you were talking about the 12th dimension or something, crystal 12, what 12 layer?
Yes, the 12th. It's the 12th tone, moon tone.
So what was particularly interesting for me as well is, so I came across this, which is this is not a paid for advert, by the way. I know people do that as well in the internet a lot, but this is a biofield tuning fork. So so when you'll be able to pick it up on the microphone. So I've got a little microphone here, and so if I do that, you should be able to hear it. No? Can you hear it? It's got like a kind of a humming sound.
I can't quite hear it.
Okay. So basically, it's a pitchfork. That's interesting. It normally picks up. So either way, this vibrates at a specific frequency. That's what a tuning fork is about. So if you use a tuning fork, it can be set to any musical note or anything, which is like then a certain note that you would use as a reference point. That's really the point. So it doesn't matter whether you can hear it or not. So when we have an intention, it's a reference point. And when we sit in the sun, for instance, you're tuning into the frequency of the sunshine. So if you're sitting with a crystal in the sun, in the sunrise setting, then it produces a certain resonance. So if you're holding the crystal in your hand and you're sounding a certain sound, then what I feel is important, which we need to learn, and it's part of the transformational process, is we need to learn to be more internalized in that we're an external creature as well as an internal creature. So in the old days, there used to be a clear distinction, but you're either an extrovert or an introvert. So sorry, you're black and white. You can't be both. You've got to be one or the other. You're either good or you're bad. You're either going straight to heaven or straight to hell. There's no middle way. And by the way, if you ask too many questions, then you're probably a bad person as well. It's much more nuanced, much more blended. And while we need to be insanely positive, I think, in order to survive the negativity that's around, we still need to be aware of the fact that negativity does exist. For instance, it's like you have a day and a night. That's a biological, natural law. So, but the one way that we can transcend this is by being more conscious, which means that the body, the physicality, which you said earlier, it has to be more conscious. So it has to have a different frequency. And just by logic, if you're looking at the yoga system, it says there's a universe that vibrates. It's a scientific fact. And if we're more aligned with these vibrations, then we're more natural and we're more prone to balance, and our hormonal system comes to balance, circadian rhythms, for example. And then the nervous system is balanced, then the body becomes more conscious. And then we're more able to open the portals so that we can bridge the gap between what's possible or what's seemingly impossible and what's seemingly possible. So these are physical skills that we can learn. So for instance, so this particular tuning fork from the Biofield company is tuned at 12 times an octave of the sound of the earth, the Schumann resonance of the earth.
Oh, beautiful. So
that what you also like is the Schumann resonance is, I think the exact figure is 7.84, 7.64 hertz. So again, if you want to do the mathematics yourself, you need to look up the exact number, find the argument for it, multiply it by 12, and then come to 93.7 hertz or something like that. So if I measure this on a meter, it'll tell me whether it's 93.7 or 9. At the same time, it's important for me as a non-mathematical person to understand that it's simply just a number. It's what does it sound like? Like, how do I resonate with it? So exactly that. So if I resonate with this, then, and it's a steady sound, which is why I wanted you to hear it. It's basically a hum. So when we hum,
I can hear it a bit now, yes.
So I'm humming now with it. So I'm going to just do that so I can get that sound. So that's, I think,
yeah. So if you can hum it, that's great, Johann.
And that bridges the gap between the world. We're sitting on a globe. I mean, how many times do people meditate and become conscious and aware of the fact that we are sitting on a globe? As we are talking here, we were talking about world bridging and universes, and we're looking at the screen here and we're like being very smart and eloquent and everything. But we're completely forgetting that we're actually sitting in the world, on the world. You're sitting on top of a big rock, and the rock vibrates like that. But we can't hear it because it's so subtle. And when we make that subtle sound louder by producing the same sound in our bodies, then you're becoming one with the earth. So if you're sitting inside the house, the sun is shining outside, you're sitting inside. So how on earth are you going to get any vitamin D unless you go out in direct contact with the sun? You're going to sit and wither away. So if you close the curtains, so the bizarre stuff, I mean, can I tell a short little funny story? So it's a very short anecdote. So I speak to this guy who was helping me with some building project. And I said to him, you must, how's your work? How's your other work? What are you doing? He says, I've just been to a place where I had to paint out a place, but I actually couldn't because there was a man sitting inside it in the flat, in the apartment. He closed the curtains, only eats takeouts, and is a chain smoker and watches TV. He says you can't paint the place because there's like nicotine tar on the walls and you can't walk on the carpets because your feet stick. I'm like, are you serious? He says, I'm not kidding you. Are you still there?
Yes, my goodness, that's extraordinary.
And you know, so you go out in the sunshine, it's a completely different frequency. And you know, like there's so many different ways of being, and we completely forget sometimes, you know, to what degree we get in on the sticky side. For instance, you know, like we live fairly holistically, but we maybe overwork, or we maybe spend a lot of time online or something like that. So, you know, there's so many layers that we can tune in on. But
and you know what? That's so interesting. I have to interrupt, but you know, one of the keywords of Worldbridger is equalize. I don't know if I've told you this before. Equalize. Isn't that interesting? And you're talking about balance and equalizing. And
yeah, it's a center. It's a centering. It's a centering. So
it's a centering, yeah.
So the whole
and
idea.
Also, the other word is opportunity. So it's death, equalize, and opportunity. Those are the three keywords for Worldbridger. And look, you're talking about it. It's fabulous.
That's really interesting. And what also you know, again, from an understanding point of view, is that there are people, and not just one, that's living in a isolated bubble of stickiness or darkness or something like that. And all these universes within universes, they actually do exist on some microcosmic level. And important in terms of the Worldbridger that we understand that we are an individual, but we are part of a community or a whole or something. And then when we understand that, then we can live more holistically, and there's more equality.
Reach out and help, you know, like that person sitting inside in the darkness, who's just become kind of totally out of this equalizing situation. But the Worldbridger being able to also bridge it, not judge it, but actually just go, wow, that may be part of your time, but what if you can bring something else in and bridge in something else, you know? And I love this thing of no exclusion, no judgment, but you actually bridging. And, you know, like you were explaining earlier, which I actually thought was really beautiful, is I can't quite remember how you put it, but this thing of bringing in, it's also with yoga, I think, like bringing in some form of balance or equalizing. And that has this kind of easy, effortless effect, which is also for me is, you know, we can make it hard. And I mean, the minds say, you know, time is art, which is like, if we aligned to everything and flow, we stay in the flow. It is easy. It may not be, you know, it's still intense and it still has many things to it, but there's an ability to really, like you were also saying, doing the impossible. You know, anything is possible. What we think is not possible, it isn't true. It's a limitation we're buying into. And Worldbridger says, you know, be willing to let go in order to equalize, to bring something else in. So yeah, it's extraordinary. I mean, it's such an essential part of life. But now I want to ask you to finish with some sound.
Yes.
But just before that, don't you want to just, Johann, I always see you so much. I see you in India as well, but also in Egypt. Don't you want to just talk a little bit about anything? Do you want to just your experience or your perception about it? Maybe the pyramids or anything about Egypt?
You know, like it's always easy to simplify something. It's also easy to make a mistake. You know, you can look at the cloud and then trip over your foot or something. And it's, you know, so to jump conclusions and generalize and stereotype and so on, it's all useful, but, you know, we also have to kind of point out, like, you know, even if you're going to make a stereotypical comment, is to be aware that you're going to do that. Simplicity, however, is always powerful, and I think I'll be able to put together everything that you asked now there. So what's interesting for me is, so it took this, the person or the people who produced this, to go like, so can I make this sound on the guitar? And it's easy enough because you can tune the guitar. So I just wanted to make a note that I can relate to, which is then, like, you couldn't hear that, but that you can hear. So in terms of music, that's lame, that's nothing, it's, you know, it's not exciting, but it's kind of quite zen. But if that sound represents the 12th octave of the earth, which mathematically it does, that particular pitch, sound, note, everything, then that means that that sound is producing a dimensional vibration gate for me to resonate with the earth in such an harmonious musical way that my body becomes more harmonious. So when I'm, you know, angry, frustrated at something, which happens, my personality can get frustrated very easily. I can do that, and then my personality becomes dissolved in that sound, and the true being, the 12th octave being of the earth, resonates with the earth. And then you ask me something and I'm, yeah, we can do that. What else is possible? Because I'm making that conscious practical point of going. So that does not sound like an angry person. And if we just hum, then the body becomes transformed like that. And if you then feel, wow, that's really powerful, then why don't we just do that more? So if we go, oh, then it's really powerful. Anecdotally, I was recently doing a performance with a colleague who we've been doing a few sound journeys, and each event has its own particular quality. And this particular one, we had headphones, you know, that like wireless headphone events, and this will fit nicely with everything that we've said. And somewhere in the beginning, she took out one of those Indian instruments that makes a drone instrument. It goes like a shruti box. It's just loud, brash, droning sound, but it's so loud and brash that it inspires you to just chant, to just go for it. And then we had the headphones on, and and microphones. So suddenly the room sound was very strong, and this is the power of music. And you know, when you listen to loud music on the headphones, not so loud that you damage your ears, but you're surrounded, you're in that sound, but you're realizing you're making the sound. As a performer, you're also creating that sound, because the pitches that you create or the other people are doing, it's creating this huge, massive sound, which for all practical purposes is as big as the earth, because that's actually what happens. And it was an absolutely unforgettable moment in my life, you know, sitting on the stage with this person and a room packed full of people and everyone going, oh, it was like so powerful. So for that moment, everything is transcended. And that's an eternal moment. And of course, as I say, that dropping back into the ordinary reality And then you're seeing it for what it is. You're going like, hey, that was an altered state of experience. And now I'm back in that state of experience. These are explorations. We don't stay there. Otherwise, you're not a chanting machine. You got to then go and deal with, literally, you got to just go function normally in a normal world. So eventually I had to get back in the car and drive back home. And you go like, oh, that was great, but I'm feeling tired now. I can hardly see the road anymore. Like, I can't wait to sleep, because it's a natural up and down vibration. So that's a cycle of life. We need to know that. So how is the pyramids? I've read since I was a child ideas around the pyramids. And what struck me particularly were two things that happened at the pyramid. And one was that I was walking around the main Giza pyramid. And then as I came around the one corner, which faces east towards the sun, I almost fell over because of the energy point of that area. And I know I've talked to you about this many times. And so I'm trying to understand it. Is it because it's located like that? Is it what? And one of the understandings or realizations I have around these sacred sites is those are powerful points before the pyramids came. And the pyramid in this case was built there to amplify that point.
Exactly.
And all it is, it's a PowerPoint. All that we were doing, we weren't doing yoga, we weren't doing Indian things, we were doing a universal thing, which was just sound. It's just going, it's just that. You can add Tibetan culture to it and say, hey, the Tibetans, they do chanting and they say the words that we don't understand, or whatever. And there's one guy going, but it's just sound. It's like if you go and surf and there's a big wave and you ride the wave or you fall off the wave, it's just a wave that you've fallen off, but you're riding that wave. And if the wave breaks over you, you've got to hold your breath for a minute or something. And then you come up and you go like, whoa, that was like scary. And when there's a little wave and it's pretty and you like having fun, then that's all it is. You're just having fun. That's simplistically, we're all those complicated things, but we're also those experiences. And we went all the way to Egypt there so that I could experience that. And that powerfully amplifies everything that we're talking about here. And then the second thing that happened in Egypt there was, remember when you went, everyone went to different sites and I wanted to spend more time at the pyramids. And then going into that small period between the three main ones, next to the Giza, the two main ones, then to be alone in that little room, which is the same as the main King's Pyramid or the Queen's Chamber in the big pyramid, I intentioned to understand vibrationally what was happening there, because that's what I understand the pyramids are for. And I could actually feel how my body frequency changed because I'm that person, or I have that capacity. And I could actually feel how those frequencies were downloaded into my body. And at the same time as I was just having that experience, I realized I'm having this experience and I had to go to that site to physically experience that. In the same way that if you have not been on a board, or if what I prefer above all is this body surfing, which is that thing with the dolphin. You just, if the wave is just right, you start swimming with the wave and then you ride it just like a dolphin, which is the ideal way to surf because there's no plank and rubber and, it's just you and the wave. And it's a fantastic feeling because you're actually riding the wave with your body, like a seal. It's like seals do that as well. And for me, that's the most fantastic thing, to stand inside the pyramid. It's just this box, but it's amplifying the earth and the shape in such a way that you can feel a cosmic vibration in your body. That's all it is. Now, we can add fantastic stories about this pyramid and that statue in the front and this king doing this and the poetry of it and all, but it's really a physical experience.
Beautiful. I love that. That is so true, and it's so amplifying the earth, yeah. And our awareness of the earth, and our co-creation and being part of the earth. that is just, I love it. I love that description. You know, if we can get more back to that, with the experience and not necessarily just the head stuff about it. The head stuff is all very interesting, but actually at the end of the day, so what, you know? It's the experience and how it can change us, how it can be a contribution to us, and we can be a contribution to it, because there's an exchange that happens automatically by being willing to become part of the merging. And once again, it's bridging the worlds, hey, with vibration. I love it.
But the one is a context for the other, though. It is the truth that the context is everything.
Yeah,
so you know, when I studied journalism, it was very interesting for me that I already knew that because I've always been well read. But to be in a lecture room where the lecturer said context is everything in terms of reporting, I felt that it was really important. Yeah.
Oh, very beautiful. Wow. So are you going to play for, what are you playing first? Or what sound or whatever? This is going to be a premiere.
I feel, you know, there's so many mantras and it's all these energies. I'm just going to venture a little bit and then say, you know, that simple mantra that we do, it's a Tibetan mantra, the one we go like, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. So however we want to do that, and I'll do it a few more times and to show you how amazing it is what we can do with the voice. So the main thing is the mantra means it brings peace. It says, what is the jewel of the purpose of all this practice is to have this energy of peace, which is a certain frequency. So there's noise, there's explosion, there's context, etc., etc., etc. But we can also just chant that over and over and make it. So if I do it like this, and that's kind of the artist part. It's not about how fantastic the guitar playing is or so, but it's like, where's the quality of that? So that's like, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Padme Hum. And what I say when we do these 108 times in the gathering, it becomes an earworm, and that's really the point, is it sticks in your consciousness and it goes into the body, and your body starts to feel the meaning of those words, which somehow translates into having peace. But if we don't do the practice, we can't have it. You can't have peace without you actually practicing it. And that's a tool, a mantra is a tool. But that's based again on sound. And the other day I was driving in the car, yesterday or the day before, and I was thinking, but what if I shout this out, you know, like, and would that be unpeaceful? You go like, no, you know, if you're doing an invocation, you can go, for instance, like, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. You know, so in a yoga class, we would go, Om. And it brings our event to a close. It just like gives it that center. And one of the wisdoms in yoga is it says, not you should or could or I suggest, it says, hey, you must begin every event and end it with the Om, because it knows that everything is actually So I
love that.
Yeah, it's amazing. But we also know we're human beings, we have dynamics. So I was thinking if I go like, Om Mani Padme Hum, I can command it, you know. And when we can do that, I was going like, whoa, Johann, that's an interesting idea. And no, I don't have the balls at the moment to go sit in front of a yoga class and go, or maybe I do now, after singing it yesterday in the car. I'm going to go like, hey guys, let's not be placid, you know. Let's like have what Egyptian spring, what is it, the Arab spring, you know. Let's just go like, we demand peace. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. You know, who's to say that it's got to be like, you know, sweet or something? And, you know, like rock and roll has its power. but these are sounds of the voice. It's the throat chakra stuff, but it's vibrational. And if we don't speak this or hum it, then it's not manifesting. Just sitting quietly with your thoughts, it's got to project into the world, and that's what the mantras are for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The impact, impact, absolutely.
It's an incantation, and we produce these. And as I say, when I saw a picture of the pyramids as a child, it reminded me of something. It could well be a past lifetime there. And that trip, I've told you a couple of times in person that what happened there in Cairo was really magical and amazing as a whole. It continues to influence me. It obviously made me remember, but it also made me recontextualize a whole lot of experiences. And it definitely helped me to embody something that I wasn't embodying at this point in my life until I went there. And these experiences are really important. Otherwise, you just stay the same. You're just staying in that same sticky room.
Yeah, exactly. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So, brilliant, Johann. Thank you so much. So, listen, can you do 3 arms or a few arms for us to end? Thank you with that beautiful voice of your amazing energy. And just to say thank you so much for the abundance of your being, hey?
Thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing or sharing
our illuminating White Crystal Worldbriger, and for living it in the world. You are such a blessing and contribution. I really acknowledge you. We all do. Thank you.
So, in a very simple meditation, we're breathing in through the nose. And as we're breathing out through the nose, we're becoming aware of the region of the forehead, because anatomically, that's what happens when we breathe through the nose. We're breathing instead of the mouth. The air comes behind your forehead down into the windpipe. We're visualizing a crystal there, as in a crystal light of the pineal pituitary glands, which are the glands that wants the sunlight, but also the light of the universe, or the light of light and love. We're feeling the breath into the body because we're noticing that the body moves when we breathe. We open the body and the breath comes into it. And that's the same breath that produces the sound that we can hear at the throat, which is also the throat chakra, which is under the third eye chakra. And it's almost a hurried meditation, but we can get it. It's so easy. We're breathing with a big sigh out the mouth to relax and bringing our attention to the heart chakra. And we use the throat as a gap, or to bridge the gap between the head and the heart, those 3 chakras. And above that, of course, the crown chakra for the universe, and below the heart chakra, the 3 other chakras. And when I hurry them, it's not disrespectfully. We can in an instant realize we're in the body on the earth, and that we can sound the 3 arms to activate all 7 chakras by just knowing that that's what I've just described. So we'll do the Om 3 times together. Inhale. Om. Om. Om.